16. Fremskritt. Anno Domini 1769, number 913, steam engines, etc. What specification? To all to whom these presents shall come, I, James Watt of Glasgow in Scotland, merchant, send greeting. Where's His Most Excellent Majesty King George III, by his letters patent under the Great Seal of Great Britain, bearing date the 5th day of January in the 9th of His Z Majesty's reign, did give and grant unto me, the Z James Watt, his special license, full power, sole privilege and authority, that I, the Z James Watt, my exes and admirals and assign, should and lawfully might, during the term of years therein expressed, use, exercise and event, throughout the part of His Majesty's Kingdom of Great Britain called England, the Dominion of Wales, and town of Berwick-upon-Tweed, and also in His Majesty's colonies and plantations abroad, my new invented method of lessening the consumption of steam and fuel in fire engines, in which said recited letters patent is contained a proviso obliging me, the Sir James Watt, by writing under my hand and seal, to cause a particular description of the nature of the said invention to be enrolled in His Majesty's High Court of Chancery within 4 calendar months after the date of the said recited letters patent, as in and by the said letters patent, and the statute in that behalf made, relation being thereunto respectively had, may more at large appear. Now know ye, that in compliance with the said proviso, and in pursuance of the said statute, I, the said James Watt, do hereby declare that the following is a particular description of the nature of my said invention, and of the manner in which the same is to be performed. That is to say, my method of lessening the consumption of steel, and consequently fuel, in fire engines consists of the following principles. First, that vessel in which the powers of steam are to be employed to work the engine, which is called a cylinder in common fire engines, and which I call the steam vessel, must during the whole time the engine is at work be kept as hot as the steam that enters it. First, by enclosing it in a case of wood or any other materials that transmit heat slowly. Secondly, by surrounding it with steam or other heated bodies, and thirdly, by suffering neither water or any other substance colder than the steam to enter or touch it during that time. Secondly, in engines that are to be worked wholly or partially by condensation of steam. The steam is to be condensed in vessels distinct from the steam vessels or cylinders, although occasionally communicative with them. These vessels I call condensers, and whilst the engines are working, these condensers ought at least to be kept as cold as the air in the neighborhood of the engines by application of water or other cold bodies. Chicago Suarez, report of the results of examinations made in relation to Suarez in several European cities in the winter of 1856-7 by the chief engineer of the Board of Suarez Commissioners, Chicago, Illinois, published by the Word, 1858. Mr. Basil Shedd informed me that he had not been able to determine all the circumstances and conditions with regard to size, inclination, and quantity of water sufficient to make a sewer self-cleansing. He would not recommend a larger sewer than one 3 feet by 2 feet, egg-shaped, to be built less than a whole brick, or 9 inches thick, although the sewer in Wilmington Street, Westminster, which is 3 feet 9 inches by 2 feet 6 inches, is but 4.5 inches thick. It is about 30 feet below the surface, generally in a very wet and gravelly soil, and after having been down 7 years is still in excellent order. It was laid in cement throughout. He would not, however, recommend the repetition of such an experiment. Mr. Basil Shedd also informed me that there were many cellars on the south side of the Thames, below the level of the sewers. They were generally intended to be watertight, but were nevertheless damp and subject to occasional floodings, so that goods in them were frequently destroyed or damaged. Misters Bazalgette and Heywood have, for several years, had their attention turned to the subject of intercepting the sewage of London, diverting it from the Thames throughout the metropolis, and discharging it at points on both sides of the river, so low down as not to become offensive again to the inhabitants. Their plan, which is described in the reports herewith presented, was approved by Robert Stevenson, Esquire, and Sir William Cobbett, but owing to the effect of public discussions and opposition with regard to this matter on the government, the carrying out of this plan has not been commenced yet. When I was in London, a commission had been appointed to examine into and report upon the expediency of adopting some plan of deodorizing the sewage, but nothing had transpired to let the public know anything with regard to the engineering works that would be recommended. The intercepting plan of Messrs. Bazalgette and Heywood, as last presented, would cost for both sides of the Thames about $15 million and divert from the river through the metropolis the sewage of the entire population, or about 3 million. The low-lying districts comprised an area of 12 square miles on the south side of the Thames and 11 square miles on the north side are to be cut off by intercepting sewers from the higher districts at all times except during heavy storms, when the surplus waters of the high districts are to discharge through the present outlets into the river. The low districts are to be drained by means of intercepting sewers, the contents of which are to be pumped up and discharged with that of the high-level sewers at or near high water, to prevent it from being carried back by the flood tide into the city. This plan, besides avoiding the pollution of the Thames, would form the basis of a much more efficient system for the street and house draining of the low-lying districts than now exists.